Qantas has reached an agreement with the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission to settle a lawsuit against the airline for selling seats on flights that had already been cancelled. Now, under the settlement, Qantas will institute a remediation program for affected passengers. And subject to the approval of the Federal Court of Australia, the airline will also pay a $100 million civil penalty to the federal government. With more on this, we're joined by the ABC's senior business correspondent, Peter Ryan. Peter, what exactly has Qantas admitted to here?
Well, good morning, Gemma. These admissions by Qantas is quite remarkable because late last year, when what was then allegations emerged and the ACCC said they were taking Qantas to court, Qantas said they would contest the claims. They denied the allegations. But now what we have is an admission from Qantas that they misled consumers about these flights that had been cancelled. In other words, these ghost flights that people in good faith had bought but later discovered, probably too late, that the flights had been cancelled. So in terms of this settlement, which has to be approved by the federal court, $100 million that Qantas will have to pay out as part of a civil penalty, but also around $20 million additionally to those consumers or customers or travellers who were impacted by these cancellations. And that works out to be about $225 on average for domestic cancellations to $450 for international. So we're talking about 86,000 flights. So a very big deal for Qantas, but also an important part of what we saw happening with Qantas last year, which resulted in the departure of Chief Executive Alan Joyce, major reputational problems, and clearly Qantas has agreed to this settlement. It's made these admissions in a vital or a quite a drastic attempt to recover some of its quite battered reputation.
And Peter, recap for us, what will the remediation look like?
Well, the remediation, as I mentioned, is going to be for international passengers, $450 for international passengers who've been impacted, $250 for domestic. So 86,000 passengers, $20 million. So that's on top of the $100 million civil penalty. So all up for Qantas, to get this out of the way, it's $120 million at a time when the airline is under a lot of pressure. There's a new chief executive, Vanessa Hudson, who we'll be hearing from later on this morning. We'll also be hearing from the ACCC chair, Gina Cass-Gottlieb, who really, in her tenure, this is a major victory for the competition regulator. And she has described Qantas's conduct as egregious and unacceptable. So once again, quite remarkable that Qantas has come to the table, reached a settlement and admitted that it misled consumers.
Peter Ryan, our senior business correspondent. Thank you. WA Premier Roger Cook says he's not treating a knife attack in Perth's south as a terrorist event at this stage. A 16-year-old male was shot dead by police in the suburb of Willetton. Officers say he stabbed a man with a kitchen knife before officers arrived. The teenager was shot after multiple attempts to stop him with tasers failed. WA Police Commissioner Col Blanche says multiple members of the Perth Muslim community contacted police to warn them the boy was dangerous.
We received the initial 000 call at about 10:10 from the male himself, believed to be from the male himself. We then received a second call some minutes later from someone at the scene. Then we continued to receive multiple calls to 000 from members of the Muslim community that had those concerns, and that went both before and after the incident. We believe he sent relevant messages to some of those members who immediately responded by calling police.
With more on this, we're joined now by reporter Tabarak Al-Jaroud from Perth. Tabarak, is there any ongoing threat to the community here?
Well, Gemma, WA's Police Minister Paul Papley spoke earlier this morning and reiterated that the 16-year-old boy was acting alone when he allegedly stabbed a man in his 30s outside a car park at Bunnings in Willetton on Saturday night. He says that there are no third parties involved and therefore no ongoing threat to the community. He also said that WA police are conducting a thorough investigation of the incident at the moment, and said that despite it having the hallmarks of a terror attack, it is not being labelled as one as just at this stage. He said that WA's Police Commissioner Cole Blanche spoke with his counterpart, New South Wales Commissioner Karen Webb, about the incident and said that this was a different situation and that further assistance wasn't needed by federal authorities, which is why it was not being labelled as a terror attack at this stage. He also said that the boy was known to police. They have yet to identify who the boy was, but they say that he had no criminal charges previously, but he was part of the Countering Violent Extremism program for the past 2 years. Now, that's a national program designed to help individuals who are at risk of being radicalised online. It is funded by the Commonwealth, but implemented individually by states and territories. The police minister says that there are currently around 141 people who are part of that program nationwide. However, he says that, sadly, it cannot be guaranteed that the program will be a success or that it will change the views of the individuals involved. This is a bit of what he had to say about that.
The challenge we confront with people like the 16-year-old in this incident is that he's known to hold views that are dangerous and potentially he could be radicalised. He'd been engaged in a program, the Countering Violent Extremism program, for 2 years. But the problem with individuals like this is they can act at short notice without warning and be very dangerous.
Tabarak, what's been the reaction from the local community?
Well, the local community in Willetton were very shocked when they heard about the incident. They said that they thought it was a very safe environment, a very safe community, and that the incident has made them fearful, and also that they now will remain alert because of it. It's also, though, caused the community to come together and call for unity. Yesterday, the Premier called an urgent meeting with multi-faith community leaders, and around 40 of them met with the Premier and the Police Minister yesterday to talk about the incident, and the Premier reiterated that it is time now for the community to come together. The Muslim community in WA have also condemned the boys' actions and say that they condemn it in the strongest terms. One of the imams at a local mosque says that that Islam has nothing to do with violence that is committed in its name. However, the community is concerned about the backlash that they might receive from this incident, especially following the recent stabbing of a bishop in Sydney. They say that the Muslim community here say that they believe this could impact them and could cause an increase in Islamophobia in the community. So they are calling for unity and for calm and hoping that the community will come together to tackle the issue of radicalisation. The police minister also said that the investigation is ongoing and that a thorough investigation will be conducted into the incident to understand what triggered the incident and what were the motivations behind it. Right now, we're still waiting for further updates on that, but an independent review into the fatal police shooting will also be conducted. It's going to be the source of multiple inquiries, including by the Police Internal Affairs and by the CCC.
Reporter Tabarak Al-Jaroud there in Perth. Thank you. Mexican authorities believe 2 Australian tourists and their American friend were killed by thieves who were trying to steal their car. The parents of Perth brothers Jake and Callum Robinson have arrived in Mexico to help authorities formally identify the bodies. North America correspondent Carrington Clark reports from Mexico.
The Attorney General of Baja California is leading the investigation into these killings. At times it was quite a tense press conference, particularly from Mexican journalists who were really pressing the Attorney General on how it was that the investigation has unfolded so far. There are major questions about how it was that they were able to discover these bodies down the well so quickly, given, as even the Attorney General described it, it was effectively a needle in a haystack, a very remote part of Baja California, and down this well that, although it was 2 kilometres away from the burnt-out campsite of Callum and Jake Robinson, it was actually, if you tried to walk there, 6 to 7 kilometres away in a very remote part of the state. But at the moment, the primary hypothesis from the state authorities is that Callum and Jake and their friend Jack Carter Rhoad were effectively in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It was not an attack on tourists. It was with the intention of stealing a vehicle. Surely they did not know the origin of these people.
Well, the real questions that for journalists in Mexico, but also obviously us from other parts of the world, is why it is at this point they're saying that they think it's unlikely organised crime is involved. Unfortunately, the details are quite gruesome. The 3 bodies, the cause of death has been put down to gunshots to the head. The 3 bodies were discovered in a well, along with a 4th body, which authorities at this point are saying is unconnected to this particular case. But experts here say that is a trademark of crime from cartels, that you would have grave sites with multiple killings being disposed of. So real questions there about exactly how this investigation is ongoing. They say they are working with both Australian and American authorities, so we wait for further details about that. But a lot of people might think this area, Baja California, is relatively numb to crime. It's renowned for its cartels, its drug trafficking activity. But the people here are really impacted. And what we saw today was people taking to the streets, particularly from the surfing community, who say that enough is enough and that this should never happen in their home.
This is completely outrageous. We feel a profound shame and sorrow that this happened in our country. We are a country that loves receiving people from all over the world.
We're at the awful part of the journey for the Robinson family. They have arrived in Mexico. We know they're on their way to Ensenada to go through what I'm sure is just an horrendous event for them personally. They are being asked to visually identify the bodies and obviously looking for questions about what happened to their beloved boys. We had heard earlier from mum, Deborah Robinson, who said small comfort to her was that the 2 were together and they were doing something that they loved.